15 years of startup in less than 15 minutes. One of my startups failed because my co-founder decided to leave the company, lied about it, and then stole the majority of the code and went building another company. Boom. If you don't know me, my name is Riley Riles. I'm a startup advisor and investor, and I gravitated in the startup world for the last 15 years. I used to be a software engineer. I got a master's degree in computer science, so you could talk software engineering with me. I've also got this double degree in design, UX design, so I was a UX engineer for about 10 years. Then I was an international consultant engineer for a big tech company in the US. I am now back at my first love, startup advisor and investor. And so in this video, I want to share you a couple of stories that happened to me, happened to friends, happened in the startup world ecosystem. Regular people learn from their mistakes, but smart people, that's you, learn from other people's mistakes. And if you like this kind of format, let me know and I can do more. The first lesson and mistake I did in the startup world was that famous, build something good and they will come. This was in 2011, 2012. I just graduated from university, just got my master's degree in computer science, and I was building an ed tech startup, education technology. I was building educational apps for kids, and we were shipping in Europe, in Africa, in India. I pitched my project to Steve Ballmer when he was the CEO of Microsoft in New York. But that's an entire story. I nearly got arrested at a police station. Let me know if you want that story in a full video. I also nearly raised $1 million with Elon Musk with an evolution of that project a couple of years later, but I failed. I failed multiple times with the ed tech, and the reason was because when I graduated from university, I was convinced that I just had to build the good stuff and people would come. Unfortunately, that's one of the classic mistakes. And mind you, back in the days, we didn't have Instagram as big as it is today. We didn't have Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and all those social media that were as big as they were today. So we could not leverage these things that you have today that are amazing. The fundamental mistake, and if you're in this situation, the fundamental mistake that you need to understand is that we are not wired for that. Let me give you a clear example. I love using cooking metaphors. So here's one. If I open a pizza joint in the street and I start baking pizza and I just leave the door of the shop open, people will start smelling the food, will start smelling the scent of the pizza in the street, maybe on the other side of the street. And so I don't necessarily have to advertise because the smell is doing it for me. My pizza smell is my ambassador for my product. But here's the thing, nobody can smell the juicy SaaS that you're baking from the other side of the internet. And the other thing, nobody's walking past your SaaS store on the road of internet, on the highway of internet. It doesn't work like that, unfortunately. So you need to do it the other way around. You need to go where people are and present them what you're building so that they can see it. And that was the first big lesson that I learned, and it took me a couple of startups to fully get into my blood and get into my DNA. So don't wait for people to come, and don't build expecting that people will come. That's the number one. The second story I want to share with you is I had a couple of friends who built startups because they wanted to elevate their community. They've identified problems in their community, and they wanted to bring a solution and elevate the community, which is very noble. I respect that. The problem was they were building things that they were selling at a very low margin. They were just making a couple of bucks per product sold or per service sold. And the problem with that is that you need huge economies of scale to make it viable. And so my friends and the people that consulted me at the time realized that it was very, very hard because they were working on very, very thin ice. That's why you hear a lot on the internet, people saying, oh, sell to the rich and blah, blah, blah. What I think they mean by that, or actually I mean by that, is if you're building your first businesses and you haven't built muscle memory around building distribution or building a network or building anything that is close to a leverage to help you deliver your product to the masses faster, you want to start by focusing on markets that have good budgets. What we mean by that is if you're selling a product to someone who's making $1 million a year, they will have eventually $1 million to spend as if you're selling something to someone who has just $100 at the end of the month. Because the reality is that $100 for one person means a lot, as opposed to $1,000 for another person is pocket change. And when you start, what you want to do is give maximum care and maximum love. That's why I always call the do things that don't scale. This is typically that. What you want to do is really give people the white glove luxury experience, and that is only possible if you have a small amount of people to service. Look at those very fancy Japanese restaurants. They have only 5 to 7 seats, but the chef is in front of you, is cooking sushis, is baking sushis one by one and serving it to you. Maximum care for a very limited number of people. And so you want to target those markets where a handful of people can get you in business, and then you will use that money to get into the higher tier of a bigger market. Another great example for that is typically Tesla's strategy. They started by making a Roadster for like 150 or 200 units or something like that, something very limited. And then they made a slightly more accessible car, and then they made a slightly more accessible car, and then we don't know. And then Elon did something we don't know. But the plan was to go mass market. So this is one of the classic mistakes I've experienced and I've seen around me, which is trying to sell to low markets, and then you have to play with the economies of scale and get thousands and thousands of customers, and it's really, really hard to maintain, especially if you start for the first time and you don't have the foundation. Point number 3, and this one is critical. One of my startups failed because my co-founder decided to leave the company, lied about it, and then stole the majority of the code and went building another company. How did I find out? I found out because I was raising money for the company, and I don't know, something happened, something clicked, and I just reached out to him and I said, hey, I'm about to raise money for the company that you left. I just want to make sure everything is clean and clear between us and stuff like that. And this is where he came back and said, hey, wait.
First, I want a bit of that money, and then I also want to be able to use the code that we built when I left.
And then bang, 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 this hit me. And so what happened was I had to pause the project because there was no way I was going to give him money that I raised nearly a year after he left. Plus, knowing that he used the code to build another startup, he never notified me for that and kind of played it dirty. And so that was a big slap on the face, and I want to make sure that you guys learn from that. And so if you're building something, in the minute you start getting a little bit of money, because you can play around in a sandbox trying to sell a service or two and see, test the market, test the waters and stuff like that. But the minute you have a signal that you may have a product market fit, you need to sit down with your co-founders and have this really, really hard conversation. Put everything on paper. As we say, the words flies, but everything that is written stays. So make sure you grab a sheet of paper and say, hey, this is what you have, this is what I have, this is how we share the things, this is what's gonna happen if we decide to split up, and these kind of things. Don't get me wrong, this is not a cover your ass 100%, but number one, it's gonna help you build a social contract, diffuse a conversation that could be very, very hard to have when the train is going super fast. And at the same time, it's also gonna be able to test your co-founder on these kind of things. If they avoid the conversation right at the beginning, that could be a red flag. Just like a marriage, you wanna set the terms really clear at the beginning and have something that is an insurance for later, as opposed to just blowing off the entire thing and making it even worse. And again, I want to emphasize, writing it is not going to cover your ass 100%, but it's a little cushion. Put everything on paper, make it very clear, have the hard conversations when you start so that you don't have to have the conversation when you're in full mode action, or even worse, when you're about to split up. Then the next story also happened to me. I was building a health tech startup, and I brought a couple of friends of mine, engineers, and we had a really good team. We had a very, very cool team. The problem that we had at this time was, after 6 months of development, we had nothing out there, nothing was shipped. And we paused for a second and we thought, okay, what's wrong with it? And the problem that we had was the CEO of the company was blocking the shipping because he was a bit of a perfectionist and he wanted to put his reputation on the product, as opposed to go, don't worry, be crappy, which is what you need to do. And the thing is, I remember he was always coming at the office and saying, hey guys, I had to look at the new version and I think we have the perfect product. It's just missing this little feature. And then he would storm out the room, and we would just spend the next 2 weeks implementing the feature, running the test, updating the build, and getting ready to ship. And 2 weeks after, it would just start all over again. Oh, guys, we have nearly the perfect product. It's just missing that little feature. And we just continue. At some point, we had to pull the trigger. We stopped the world. It's a very famous practice from Toyota, a lean practice, stop the world. And we had this deep conversation with the founder, and we said, okay, where's the limit? At what point can you give us green light that if we do this, we put this into production and we go full marketing? He was not able to give us a deadline, and he was not able to give us a list of features. So we had no minimum lovable product, MLP. Shout out to Rachel. This is where I was 100% clear that we would go nowhere. And I stopped, left the project, left my shares, and 3 years later, I checked on the startup. It was administratively still alive, but they hadn't shipped anything. The lesson here is you can create zombies and never-ending zombies by constantly pushing the deadline and adding features, converting yourself that, okay, if I just add this new feature, then we're gonna make it after, and always pushing that deadline of let's test the market, let's go with the trial by fire. And this is gonna kill most of startups. And at this stage, if you recognize yourself in any of those stories and you don't know who to talk to, I dropped a couple of free consultation links in the description down below. Feel free to click one, schedule a call, and let's have this conversation. Back to the video. And the last lesson I want to share that I learned multiple times in the last 15 years, and I've seen so many times with founders this year: nobody knows you exist. Advertise more. So here's the thing. Probably 60% of people coming to my consultation, they come and they say something like,
hey, I build this product or service, I spend 1 to 3 months in the development, I have an MVP or an MLP, but I have 0 users. Can you help me?
And the answer is pretty simple: advertise. And especially for people who have a technical background like I do, we are very comfortable in the building area. We're very comfortable with the coding, with the building, with the automating, but we're not comfortable with the marketing and the selling. This is the hard thing for us. But here's the thing: as an engineer, if you're an engineer, you know that what you need to do first is focus on the hard things. If you want to build a car and you start by building the wheels or the frame, what did you just achieve? Because you know that without an engine, none of it will work. The hard part is the engine. Building the wheel or choosing the windows, the paint, the frame, or whatever is the easy part. You can even outsource it. So that's the same thing for your SaaS or your startup or your service. The hard part is not to build it, especially nowadays with advancement of AI and technology. Building is not the hardest part. The hardest part is to get people to know you exist and pay for your product, and even then stay multiple increments. So if you want to do one thing, is start by doing the hard thing first. Build the engine of your business, not the engine of your product. And the engine of your business is the marketing, is the sales, is the distribution, is the talking to the people. That's the hard thing. And that's what I learned, and that's probably the most precious lesson I've learned, and I've seen people learning around me. Nobody knows you exist. Advertise more. And because that's the last point of the video and you guys stay till the end, I'm gonna give you a little bit of a tip to do that. What you need to do is essentially split your calendar or your daily schedule into 2 parts. And the first part, you need to dedicate it to sales and marketing and research. So talking to people so you know what their problem is, so that they know you exist, and so that they get interested in buying your solution. That's what you need to do the first thing in the morning. That's the hard part. And then on the afternoon, you can work on your product or your service and the deliverability of that. So most important lesson, I'm still applying it till today. Let's just be honest with that. Everyone is applying it, but nobody knows we exist. Nobody knows you exist, so advertise more. Hey, I hope you liked this video today. I hope this was very, very useful to you guys. Let me know in the comments down below if it was the case, or if you have any questions. If you want to book a free 30-minute consultation with me, the startup advisor and investor. I'll drop a couple of links in the comments down below. And until next time, you know the drill. Advertise more. No, that's not my signature. Boom. Yes, sir.